Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind giving us a like, and consider going ahead and subscribing as well, that would be fantastic. And if you really want to go the extra mile, go down to the description below and click the Patreon link. Lots of cool stuff going on there. As always, I love you, and enjoy the show, guys.
The DeathWorlders, a story by user Hambone. Chapter 25, Where We Stand. Date point, 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, and 2 days after Vancouver. At Sycity House, North Clearwater County, Minnesota, USA, Earth. Julian at Sycity.
Allison fell asleep.
Julian glanced down and to his right. Allison had indeed fallen asleep, curled up next to him on the bed with her head down on one arm. He brushed some blonde hairs out of her face. So she did. It is midnight.
Oh.
Shu glanced at the wall clock guiltily.
I'd better let you sleep too,
she suggested. I mean, you don't have to, Julian told her. They'd spent 8 hours together just hanging out, sitting and lounging around on the bed, discussing everything from current world politics to all the Disney movies that had been released in their absence. There was an elephant in the room that hadn't been touched on at all, but at the same time, not touching on it had seemed right somehow.
Yeah.
Shu began to scoot off the bed, then paused and turned back.
Thank you.
For what?
For not freaking out.
Julian chuckled quietly and looked back down at Allison. Freaking out? I'm more worried about pinching myself and waking up. That earned one of Shu's prettiest smiles.
2 females who are into you at once, every male's fantasy.
Julian diplomatically ignored the unconsciously Gowan way she'd phrased herself and kept playing with Allison's hair, acutely aware that there was honestly a yes in there, but there was something more important underneath. He shook his head. Not that, he said.
Are you sure? I can see your ears going pink,
she teased. He laughed, but it faded quickly, and he stopped playing with Allison's hair and took a thoughtful breath. I don't want to wake up and find I'm still on Nightmare, he said. All alone. He swallowed and fidgeted into a more traditional cross-legged position, feeling suddenly vulnerable, and tried to turn it into a weak joke. Kinda suck, wouldn't it? Shu's smile had faded a little, but she nodded understanding. She opened her mouth to say something, then a thought seemed to occur to her, and she darted forward to give him a stinging pinch on his forearm. He clutched at the spot reflexively and blinked at her.
Still here?
She asked. He paused, then shut his eyes and nodded, grinning. Yeah, still here. She offered him her arm.
My turn.
Rather than pinching it, he took her hand and studied the 3 ragged scar lines that ran from her elbow to her wrist and up the back of her hand to the knuckle. Hunter teeth were scalpel sharp and would have cut cleanly if they had sliced across her arm rather than raking along it. As it was, the marks were there to stay. She hesitated and bit a lip.
Please, don't.
He let go of her hand again. Sorry.
It's okay. don't like them.
Julian looked at her arm again. If it helps, he replied. I like them. Shu studied her scars as if wondering whether they were looking at the same things.
How can you like them?
She asked. If you didn't have them, we'd never have met.
I don't,
She frowned.
What?
Well, think about it. You only have them because you survived getting them, and here you are. If you never got those, who knows where you'd be? Shu swallowed and looked at her arm, as if seeing the marks there in a slightly new light. So, yeah, I like 'em, Julian finished. 'Cause you're here. My God, Julian! They both jumped as Allison chimed in. That was fucking romantic. Well, I mean, Julian cleared his throat awkwardly and never made it as far as a coherent thought.
Sorry,
Shu apologized. It's okay. Allison sat up and thrust an arm up into the air, stretching.
Just don't kiss him.
Shu nodded, looking a touch crestfallen.
I know.
Allison laughed a little and gave her a hug.
Actually, I'm warming up to the idea. You are?
You are?
If you both want to.
Allison nodded.
Yeah, though, maybe get my permission first. I don't think I'm ready for... Not yet.
Small steps, Julian agreed. He looked to Shu, though he was pretty sure the moment was wrong. Shu backed off the bed and perched on the edge.
Not right now,
she said. Yeah, not yet, Julian agreed. Shu stood up and aimed a thumb over her shoulder toward the other bedroom.
I'd better... and let you...
You sure? Allison asked.
It's a big bed and he's warm.
Shu shook her head.
I need some time to think,
she said.
It's okay.
It was Allison's turn to seem disappointed.
Okay. Sweet dreams, babe.
Once he'd heard both doors click shut, Julian stood, pulled his shirt off over his head, threw it into the laundry hamper, and turned out the light. Near-pitch darkness marched straight into the room and set up shop like it had never really left. He undid his belt, let his jeans fall to the ground, and climbed into bed. Beside him, Allison finished squirming out of her own clothes, and she snuggled up to him.
You okay?
She asked. You're warming to the idea? Julian asked her. Allison kissed him on the cheek by way of a reply. Ow.
What? I said it and I meant it, if that's what you want.
This is starting to sound like you want, I don't know, like some kind of a poly thing?
Maybe.
Maybe. She kissed him in the dark.
What do you want? Be real, baby. What would you like?
Lots of different bits of me are all saying both of you and for all kinds of different reasons, Julian told her honestly. But? I'm kind of scared there'd be a loser if we went that way, like one of us would wind up being the spare wheel. I don't want that to happen to any of us. You, me, or her. His night vision was coming in, and he could just make out how Allison rested the side of her head in her hand and thought about what he'd said.
God, that'd really hurt her. Yeah.
How would we avoid that?
We'd be real,
Allison said.
That's the key to any good relationship.
True.
Right. So why should that change just because we'd be 3 and not 2? She pointed out. One-on-one relationships can have a loser too.
You really want to do this, don't you? Julian asked. Allison put her head back down on his shoulder.
I don't know why exactly, but I do,
she agreed.
I don't want to spend my life stuck in other people's comfort zones. Yeah, if we do this, maybe one of us gets hurt, and it won't be Shu. I won't do that to her.
But? Julian asked. She nuzzled into his shoulder.
So maybe we get hurt. I've been hurt before, and I don't think it's so bad next to never trying.
So, are we going for it?
I want to,
she said simply.
Do you?
Yes.
Then it's up to Shu.
Allison kissed him again, then rolled over.
Be the big spoon?
Julian smiled to himself and cuddled up behind her, infiltrating his arm over her waist. Yes, ma'am. She issued the hugest, most content sigh and wriggled back into him.
I love you.
What, no good boy? She nodded sleepily.
They mean the same thing, dummy.
He smiled, kissed her just below her ear, then put his head down and let her fall asleep. I know. Date point: 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, and 2 days after Vancouver. London, England, Earth. Regari. Any being who traveled from planet to planet needed to get used to sleeping according to what their body demanded rather than according to the local diurnal rhythm. When traveling from Gau to Gorai could mean landing at a completely different time of day and in a day-night cycle that was nearly a third longer. It never paid to try and adjust to local time unless you were intent on staying for a while. The difference was even more pronounced on Earth, with its too-short day. Hence why Regari was awake at 5 a.m. The other three weren't. Warhorse and Baseball, in true DeathWorlder fashion, seemed to have learned a skill that Regari wouldn't have thought possible in being able to just sleep wherever and whenever they were, for as long as they needed. What was even more impressive was that Regari knew that should he make the smallest noise of alarm or distress, both men would be awake and alert immediately. They seemed to have discovered a quirk in Ima, meanwhile. After their nightly ritual of shampooing, rinsing, conditioning, rinsing again, and then blow-drying, she went completely berserk. The moment the blow-dryer was turned off and she was able to escape the ordeal of being bathed, she would flit restlessly around the room, cleaning up every object that was even microscopically out of place, flipping TV channels, asking questions about every subject that crossed her mind, and even, on one occasion, pouncing from the bed onto Warhorse's shoulders and imitating a human cry of "giddy up." After about an hour of this, she would quite suddenly crash and sleep until somebody woke her. This had left Regari to occupy himself for several hours a night every night, and so he had discovered the internet. Data networks were easy. Every species had one, and each was a reflection of the minds of its creators, which, when the minds in question were human, meant that the internet was anything but easy. Being almost completely illiterate in English only complicated matters. Still, after some trial and error, Regari had eventually managed to navigate the prickly shibboleth maze of in-jokes, references, and running gags, some of the most enduring of which were as old as Warhorse. Beyond them was an opportunity. Regari was an older and much wiser male than he'd been in the days when he had first criticized his fathers for cozying up to the Dominion. Gone was the earnest, naive young Whitecrest, and in his place was the kind of warrior who didn't have too many scars, not on account of staying out of fights, but on account of winning them. And for all that, he was a skilled agent of conflict in the real world. When it came to data and intelligence, Regari knew he was among the rarefied stratum of the very, very best. Compiling a script to trawl assorted translation sources for probable meaning and then convert the written English into the specialist, high-density code that his implants could read was almost trivial. English may have been a context-heavy and intricate language, but the Cortai had excelled themselves when they had created the universal communication medium. That was the intermediary through which all translation took place. It was believed to be capable of communicating every possible nuance of meaning, including detailed descriptions of sensory experiences and senses that no known species possessed or could conceive of. Still, the word fuck gave it trouble. Perhaps due to their own bias towards orderly and logical systems, the Cortai had never considered that an innocuous monosyllable could carry such a titanic freight of varied meaning. It wasn't that the word specifically had a nebulous meaning, but that the formal meaning, so to speak, was just the root of the most hideously tangled snarl of colloquialisms that Regari had ever heard of. Somehow, he just knew that he'd be debugging the algorithm that decided which particular fuck was being used in a given context for as long as he tried to use the script. But it would do. What it would do was allow him to read English and, haltingly, write it, too. This was important because Regari's opportunities had 3 components. The first was simple intelligence gathering. Not that he would gain anything classified or sensitive this way. But that didn't matter. Simply an insight into what humanity's informed civilians, retired veterans, and armchair strategists thought of their species' position was edifying enough. What he found there impressed him. Short on specifics though they might be, a hard core of amateur analysts were busily assembling a dossier on humanity's strategic position that was every bit as thorough as Regari's own, and often rather more informed. It made for mixed reading. The innate superiority of humans as warriors was ultimately badly outweighed by the logistical superiority of the rest of the galaxy. On the other hand, nobody could think of a way in which the planet Earth itself might be vulnerable save through technological possibilities so outlandish as to be pure fiction. Part 2 was more fun than Part 1. Humans were already well disposed towards Gowans. Annoying instincts vis-a-vis dogs and cute fluffy animals aside, Sister Shu was substantially better known to the internet than she probably suspected. Adopting and protecting her had done Gao an enormous favor there. So, Part 2 was further cementing that relationship, which led to Part 3. Mischief. Baseball and Warhorse weren't remotely shy about their affection for each other, and on this particular occasion were asleep and rumbling spooned up close, with one of Base's hairy arms resting gently on Horse's waist. Picking up Base's phone, logging into a social media app that allowed new photos and video footage to be uploaded directly to the internet was trivial. Making it seem innocent would have been equally easy, just a curious Gowan accidentally activating a device he didn't know how to stop. But that wasn't the point. The point was to humanize himself and, more importantly, to humanize the SOR. He mimed the shush gesture that he'd learned and played the camera around the room, taking care to capture as good a view as he could of the two protectors. Ima got a little screen time, curled up with her nose stuffed into her fur and an ear twitching slightly as she dreamed, then back to Regari for a wave to the crowd, and done. Too bad for one Staff Sergeant John Burgess that his social media profile was set to public by default. Less than a minute after it was uploaded, the video had leaked. Less than 10 minutes later, the footage was on YouTube. By the time 2 hours later, that warhorse stirred in his sleep ahead of waking up for a bright new day, and Regari had to close all the browser tabs. Hashtag Sleepy Beef was trending across the planet, and Regari himself had secured the affections of tens of thousands of humans. Not bad for 5 minutes' work. Date point, 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, and 2 days after Vancouver. Planet Perfection. The Core Worlds. Work. I have a bounty to claim. The creature manning the desk was a Mjernherm, and a long way from home. The acid etching on the brow plate of its chitinous head made it clear that this particular one had been exiled for some unspecified crime, and somewhere in its travels, some misadventure had cost it a limb. Rather than going for cybernetic prosthesis, the creature had opted to receive cloned or possibly donor organic transplants instead. The replacements were slightly paler shades of mottled dark verdigris. "The wanted person boards are on the left," it said, communicating clear impatience and disinterest. Whether or not its misadventures had robbed it of a sense of manners, or whether all Mjernherm were like that, work couldn't guess. She'd never met a Mjernherm before. "It isn't a person?" "A bounty on something that is not a person." It put the tablet it had been reading down, and its vestigial wings buzzed briefly, signaling clear and naked derision. "Please do regale me, O brave explorer. Which fabled lost planet have you uncovered? A death world full of sapient trees? A city built entirely of platinum? Merworky Station?" "Yes." It buzzed again, some subtle shift of pitch and frequency that was inaudible to Kuumbura ears, was enough to communicate the difference between derision and confusion. "What?" "I have found Merworky Station." "Merwork," willed her translator to broadcast sincerity and irritation in equal measure. The Mjernherm tilted its head, studying her skeptically, and with no small sign of cautious avarice. Merwork could hardly blame it for that. Given the size of the finder's fee on Merworky, even the small percentage that bounty officers took from each contract would translate to a healthy lump sum in any currency. "Prove it." "What kind of fool do you think I am?" Merwork asked. "Open the transaction and log my report. Then I prove it." With an air that suggested it would have preferred to be grumbling aloud, it did so. Merwork promptly uploaded her identity information and the sensor records that she discreetly had copied from Negotiable Curiosity's memory. The Mjernherm studied the proof in front of it for nearly a full 2 re. "It pays to be skeptical in my line of work," it declared, and opened a few tools and programs that, within the protected environment of the transaction, dissected her file in search of evidence of forgery.
But I can find no evidence that this is a fake.
So,
you present me with a gamble,
it said.
Morweki is a myth. No serious being believes it did anything other than explode. And the size of the reward, I can only just afford to pay out.
You sound very much like the last 3 bounty officers I went to,
Work told it.
All of them have missed the opportunity of earning, by my estimation, 44 Dominion development credits.
Its vestigial wings thrummed as it thought long and hard. Then, very slowly and carefully, it poked its pincer to the large blue Accept button. A notification in Works field of vision informed her that she was now many hundreds of times wealthier. It was an absurd sum, enough to buy a fleet of ships the size of negotiable curiosity. There was no use, or any real point, in trying to conceal her delight. So instead she reared up to her full height, thrust her forepaws into the air, and cooed a long and loud trill of Kuumbara triumph. Then she dropped back to all fours.
"A pleasure,"
she told the Majernherm, which had covered its auditory organs,
"to do business with you.
If I come to regret it, I swear by the etchings of my kin that I will spend the last of my funds on somehow finding the human disaster himself and hiring him to come after you,"
it replied, though there was a note of amusement and confidence that it would need to do no such thing. Fighting to preserve a semblance of dignity, she exchanged gestures of respect with the odd creature, shuffled around, and ambled out of the bounty office, fantasizing about being able to finally get out from under Bedu's skinny thumb, of not having to spend an attosecond longer tolerating Hiskavik, of being able to return to Kuumborai, get in good with one of the great houses, maybe even become a matriarch herself. She effectively died in mid-stride. Nobody noticed. At most, if they were paying attention, they would have seen a slight stumble, and the way she stopped, took her bearings, and kept walking. To an outside observer, there was no hint at all that anything was seriously amiss. On the inside, 11 took stock of the situation and set about her mission. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one today. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for liking and subscribing and going all the places where people dare not tread in light of day. But I hope you all have a wonderful day, week, month, year, even if it hasn't been yours, you know. And I will talk to you all in the next one. Today, I'm going to ask you, how much money would it take for you to never have to work again and just work on passion projects? Like, what's the amount of money that you would need in order to not have to work again, or, you know, something along those lines? And what would you be willing to do to get it? Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. As always, I love you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.